welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada, we love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful August the 27th, 2019. Brando Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, it was amazing. I woke up this morning, the world was still turning, the NFL was still there, even after Andrew Luck's retirement. I don't see what everybody's all upset about.
It's all fair love and war. And the moonshine was not discovered, Big C. That's always good. That's always a win down south. A lot of great things happening in sports and also news. Just so much going on, and whether it's tennis, whether it's baseball. We know basketball, there are a lot of people talking about WNBA teams that are getting set to decide who's going to play for that championship. And of course, college football, and people are all happy about that. I do want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Big C, it's about 105 degrees here in Northern California. Even north of the Golden Gate Bridge, where you're on the Pacific Ocean, they're expecting temperatures to hit 100. I know you guys are having a lot of thunderstorms down south. How's the weather holding up with all that barbecue smoke they're clearing out, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's that time of the year. You know, woke up, all of a sudden it seemed like fall. The weather had dipped about 20 degrees here.
Yeah.
It was quite shocking. But, you know, this is what to expect. When football season comes around, the temperature gets a little cool.
Yep.
The fans get a little heated. The barbecue grills are always burning outside the stadium, Charlton.
Yeah.
Just a fun time of the year.
Yeah, I love this time of year. It's just great. We talk about being grateful and had a nice invite today, and I'll talk about that shortly. But I always am reminded that we have this. I want to just pay homage to our veterans. My father was a veteran. I have a brother who's a veteran. And I don't take for granted that they put their life on the line for people to be free. And I want to say for people who may be going through some issues, sometimes they don't know where to go, Big C. But if we tell them enough, then maybe they'll write it down and even program it into their phones. You can dial this National Suicide Hotline number. It's 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. Big C, again, your thoughts on why that's so important to you, Big C.
Well, Charlton, it is very important. As people want to say thank you to our veterans and pay homage to all those veterans who have fought in these tremendous wars around the world, Charlton, you got to think about the fight that they have to serve when they come back home, Charlton.
Yeah.
Many of them deal with PTSDs after war, Charlton, just the trauma of dealing with war.
Yep.
To come back and say, okay, just get back to civility, get back to your normal everyday life. They've been burnt out, Charlton, on what occurred over there across the seas. And we have to find a way to help them every day, not just say thank you, but give them a refuge, Charlton, to look forward to.
Yeah.
Someone to speak to other than just thank you, someone who can help them deal with the problems, understanding the stress that they go through. Many of these veterans are homeless, Charlton.
I know.
In this great country of America, we never hear our administration talk about our homeless veterans. They're always talking about what they're going to do for veterans, Charlton. There's a lot of problems that they could solve for veterans. Just reach out to them, give them an opportunity, give them a place to live, get them a job,
Yeah.
Get them some mental and psychiatric help, Charlton. That's what's needed for those veterans. So that National Suicide Hotline, Charlton, is the last resort, you know, that these veterans have to go through because they have been reaching out, seeking help from our government, from
Yeah.
our society,
Yep.
which has turned their backs on them, Charlton. So every time we give out that National Suicide Hotline number, Charlton, for the veterans and any other American that's going through trauma or turmoil in their life,
Yes.
the life you save is the phone call that you make.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate. We all stay on our phones constantly throughout the day. Call the National Suicide Hotline number.
800-273-8255, 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. I really appreciate that, Big C. You can follow Big C Sports, brought to you by Google and Alexa. You can just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear our page pop up, or you'll hear from welcome to our sponsors, welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C, who'll do his thing. So Big C Sports Podcast. When you think Google or Alexa, just think Big C Sports. I want to just give a thank you today to a gentleman that's doing a lot of good things in California. His name is Michael Harris. And we know California is called Farm to Fork. It feeds a lot of the world's people. Michael Harris, part of the California Black Agricultural Working Group. And today I was just having the chance to give a few words, but it's the company you keep, Big C. This is about commerce with the Pan-African Trade and Caribbean Trade and United States Chamber of Commerce. Now, part of this group is called some pretty big names. The United States Commercial Service, which is United States of America Department of Commerce, California Department of Commerce, the Department of Chamber in California. There's so much going on with some major universities around California. Even Governor Gavin Newsom is behind it, so I introduced myself as Big C Sports and also an insurance broker, and I really appreciate Michael for that happening today. I know I want to talk about some things, Big C, that happen in sports. There's a lot of things that are going on. And before we even get into it, I know we had the thing on Andrew Luck. I know there are a lot of times when players, they're just hurt, they're banged up, and they really don't know where to go. I want to start today talking about the 2019 All-NFL Retirement Team, and it's just our own choice, Big C's choice. You don't have to agree with it, but I want to think, it makes you think about it. Sometimes we take for granted how good things are. Andrew Luck, quarterback for the Colts. Jamal Charles for the Jaguars. Running back Chris Johnson for the Cardinals. Tight end Rob Gronkowski for the Patriots. Wide receiver Doug Baldwin, Seahawks. Wide receiver Jordy Nelson, the Raiders. Offensive line Max Unger for the Saints. Ryan Khalil for the Panthers. Offensive line T.J. Lang for the Lions. Offensive line Anley DeVitri for the Falcons. And offensive line Jared Vanderveer for the Broncos. Big C, that's a lot of big names that we were calling their names just last year, Big C. Your thoughts?
These players, Charlton, have been active in the NFL, some of them for up to a decade. And when you think about putting together that all-retirement offensive team that you just named, Charlton, these are players that were starters. They were very productive members of teams last year in the NFL, helping them win to winning seasons, getting into the playoffs, Charlton.
Yeah.
Many people don't think about that. They only want to think about one or two headliners, but there are players that are constantly retiring from the NFL for various reasons, whether it's injuries, whether it's just length of career, Charlton. It's time to move on.
It's time to move on. And everybody has to understand, we spend so much attention as a society focused on Andrew Luck. Being at the state capitol today, it's a beautiful facility. But there are so many people protesting outside because they want health care. Andrew Luck retired because he's not healthy. And for the knuckleheads that booed him for wanting to be healthy for his family and his newborn coming, those people are knuckleheads. I appreciate anyone that has the right to do what they want to do in this life. Big C, I want to also do the Big C 2019 All-NFL Retirement Defense. Now, a lot of these guys, and you can relate to them, because they like to grab things with their hands, whether the dinner table grabbing some ribs or grabbing that quarterback. Defensive end, Julius Peppers for the Panthers. Defensive tackle, Kyle Williams for the Bills. Defensive tackle, Alohi Nada for the Eagles. Defensive end, Chris Long for the Eagles, a very conscientious man. There's linebacker, Brian Orakpo for the Titans. Linebacker, Derek Johnson for the Raiders. Navarro Bowman for the 49ers. I had an interview with the great Navarro Bowman earlier in the year. Defensive back, Adam Jones, Broncos. You look at also Andre Hall for the Texans for a DB. DB Vontae Davis for the Bills. Another DB, Alteron Werner for the Dolphins. And then kicker, I remember the first round draft pick and the last number one pick by Al Davis out of Florida State, Sebastian Janikowski. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, you think about a plethora of careers that you just named, players that have been all-pro, players that have been to the Super Bowl, players that have been very effective in the NFL and helping their team's journey to success.
Yeah.
But when it comes time to quit, Charlton, whether it's by your own volition or by the team's volition, the thing about it, when a team cuts a player, Charlton, no one ever says anything about, oh, well, that's how it looks. But when a player is prescient enough to make their own decisions about it's time for me to end this journey of my career and start a new one, people are feeling justed. How dare this individual? I remember when Barry Sanders retired, Calvin Johnson retired, Charlton, the great Jim Brown going back to his leaving the NFL.
Yeah.
And people like, how dare this individual leave us before he's broken down?
Yeah.
It's like when we go to a car dealer, we normally trade in that car before it stops running.
Yeah.
To get some value out of it, to get an upgrade to a new one. And that's what these players are doing. They're trading in their NFL careers while there's some mileage still left on their bodies.
Yeah.
So that they can upgrade into that next phase of life. And I praise these guys because I know how difficult it is to walk away from a game that you love, that children play for free,
Yeah.
and you get paid to do it. It's a very difficult thing. It's an honor to be a professional athlete.
Yeah.
But it's also an honor to have a life after professional sports, Charlton.
Yeah, one where you can walk. And I think it's a state, and I might be wrong, but I think it was Oklahoma that I think some judge awarded, I think over, $500 million because of opioid addiction, and I guess they're going after Johnson & Johnson. But people have issues. Now, Andrew Luck's just one person. Who knows what he had to do to stay healthy? But I challenge any person, if you don't feel well, it's stupid to say, be tough and tough it out. If you have common sense, you go to a doctor. He actually wanted to retire early, and the coach had him think about it. So people that think he gave them a last-second warning, Big C, that's not what he did. He gave them ample time, more time than a team will give you if they trade you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, he gave them the time. There's no time frame on a player saying that I no longer want to do this. You got everybody in the media talking about, well, he should have let them know at the end of the season. He should have let them know at the beginning of training camp. He let them know when his mind was ready to let them know, Charlton. That's the thing about being a grown man and being prescient enough to make your own decisions.
Yeah.
That's what Andrew Luck did. And I despise everybody in the media who wants to be critical of this man.
Yeah.
Because everybody that's in the media that's working for a network or a broadcast company or even a radio station, Charlton, when somebody walks in and say, hey, things are just not working out with us. We're not going to renew your contract, or we're going to terminate your contract.
Yep.
Are you mad with that broadcast company, Charlton, for coming in and making that announcement to you? For saying, hey, we're no longer going to utilize your service? And if you look at all the guys on television, they'll all be replaced.
Yeah.
All the guys in radio, they'll all be replaced.
Yep.
And by somebody who is pulling the strings from an executive level, say, it's time for you to go.
Yeah.
And so are you going to be upset? Are you going to say that network jousted you because they didn't give you another year or two of time?
Right. That's true. It's true. You can watch all the programs now. There are people on TV that used to play the game, whether it's college or pro, and a lot of them still wish they could. Now, I know a lot of times people have issues about things, and I don't want to just be another dumbed-down sports talk show. And that's why I want to thank Governor Gavin Newsom, because he did something that former Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger would not do. It's a Pan-African Caribbean United States trade. They talked about today, California has almost 40 million people. If you look at the population of African Americans and Hispanics, that would be about 35% of the population. That means you have a lot of pull when it comes to the House and the Senate. So they're trying to get more people to work together. And just like you talked about, the gentlemen that gave money to pay off some college debt, Big C, they're trying to get more people to engage in commerce and not just worry about who's 6'5" and 300 pounds and runs a 40 and 4.5, or who can bench press 400 pounds or throw the football 90 yards downfield. They're talking about business and commerce. And when we talk about that, a lot of these athletes, once they retire, Big C, the ones who are prescient, they also get into business. Why is it important that a mayor like Gavin Newsom can have such a prescient mind that he's reaching out to black Americans, where even in the White House, they haven't reached out as much as they could, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that goes on in a lot of major cities and major states where you've had mayors and you've had governors that have gone out and looked at the majority of the minority population to get them involved. I mean, in a lot of the southern states, when you think about black activism and where it started it started in the southern state, and it also has to have some assistance from the government leaders in those states, Charlton, that have set up quorums and things. I mean, in the great state of Georgia down there, I remember Maynard Jackson, who was such an activist to force the state and the government to have blacks involved in business, that they got a percentage of everything that was occurring in that state. So I think other states are following the blueprint of what Maynard Jackson did decades ago, Charlton.
Yeah, and it's good to see that. So not only is Big C Sports the #1 sports show in the universe, also having the chance to rub arms with a lot of people that are very powerful in California. It's the world's 5th largest economy in California. More people have to get involved. Big C, I want to cover what's near and dear in my heart. When we talk about football, I want to get Big C's thoughts, and this is Big C's choice. We didn't get it from some we didn't Google it, Big C. We got it from our own thoughts. I want to talk about NFL's best receivers. It's our opinion. I would say DeAndre Hopkins from Houston Texans. And I want to get your thought on him and how he stacks up with Michael Thomas and the New Orleans Saints. Big C, your thoughts.
Well, DeAndre Hopkins is that unknown entity in the NFL, but he's known by everybody who's playing the game. The media doesn't love him because of where he is down in Houston. You know, they're the second team in that state.
Yeah.
But DeAndre Hopkins, when you look at what he has done in his career down at Houston, and even last season, 115 receptions, Charlton over 1,500 yards, a very productive receiver ever since he was an up-on draft pick out of Clemson for the Texans. He's been a dominant receiver. Other players who run their mouths get a lot more notoriety, but he runs his legs on the field and gets a lot more productivity.
Very well said, Big C. What about Julio Jones, the Atlanta Falcons, and Devontae Adams from the Green Bay Packers? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Julio Jones is just a beast, Charlton. One-on-one, he's uncoverable in the NFL. You think about Devontae Adams, he is the go-to guy up in Green Bay. Both of these guys are outstanding receivers, Charlton. And, I mean, when you put together a list of great receivers in the NFL, when you go, from top to bottom, I mean, there's very little separation on the list.
There's so much separation if they get the right quarterback that can throw the ball down the field to them, Big C. I want to bring up another couple of other good old boys, Keenan Allen for the L.A. Chargers. It took me about a whole year to stop saying San Diego, Big C. Now I say L.A. all the time. L.A. Chargers, Keenan Allen. And then Mike Evans for Tampa Bay, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at those two outstanding receivers, Charlton, physically they mirror each other. Both of them 6'4", 6'5", great gallop down the field, Charlton, tremendous hands. They're great targets when you look at them. Both of them have been highly productive since coming out of Texas A&M and then coming out of Cal. They've both been all-pro receivers.
Speaking of another guy that understood it's better to drive than ride a bicycle, Juju Smith-Schuster for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then also A.J. Green for the Cincinnati Bengals. They're in the same division, and they're two dynamic players. Big C, your thoughts?
Two dynamic players, Charlton, and two opposites of each other. When you think about A.J. Green, when healthy, he can go deep with anybody in the league. Juju Smith-Schuster has grown up fast in the NFL at Pittsburgh since coming out of USC. He's developed into a top-flight receiver, allowed them to get rid of Antonio Brown because they can rely on him every game, Charlton.
Yeah, he's amazing. He was also on a TV show, I think, The Gong Show, with Steve Harvey, who as a TV host makes more money than any football player. He makes $40 million a year, Big C, the great Steve Harvey. Also, T.Y. Hilton, Indianapolis. I know he has to feel a little bit sad with what happened with Andrew because he caught a lot of passes from him. And then Adam Thielen from Minnesota, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, T.Y. is going to have to really step up his game this year with Jacoby Brissett. He was an all-pro receiver last year, had 100 receptions in Indianapolis, helped Andrew Luck get comeback player of the year. You think about Adam Thielen. Here's a guy who worked as a ball boy for the Minnesota Vikings when he was a kid and become an all-pro receiver. He led the league last year in receptions, Charlton, that unknown entity who became an all-star.
Became an all-star and a grown man doing it, Big C. Also, Stephon Diggs, Minnesota. Remember the great catch he had against New Orleans when some defensive backs closed their eyes. You can't tell me they didn't close their eyes when he caught that pass and ran in to help to win that playoff game, Big C. Also, Tyreek Hill, Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs have to have the most maligned receivers and running backs because every year under the tutelage of Andy Reid, there's still a lot of guys that get in trouble, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Stephon Diggs, Charlton, he's a guy who has grown up in everybody's faith in the NFL, and that tandem between he and Thielen in Minnesota is one of the top two tandems in the NFL. You think about Tyreek Hill, he's a game changer. It's hard to cover him. I mean, he's a little water bug type receiver. He can get past the defense in a hurry, and now he has a quarterback that can get the ball over the top to him or any position on the field that he's in.
That's a good receiver down there, Big C. I also want to bring up Brandon Cooks, disappointed from his Super Bowl performance for the Rams, but then Robert Woods out of Los Angeles, also two dominant receivers. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that's a dynamic duel there in Los Angeles. They got a great young quarterback in Jared Goff, and they've made him an outstanding quarterback in the NFL. And, with that tandem there, Charlton, who do you double? Because they also have Cooper Kupp on the inside in the slot when healthy, Charlton. They got a young tight end. It's a dynamic receiving corps there in Los Angeles and two outstanding receivers on the outside.
Another name that wouldn't cross the mind of many people, Kenny Golladay for the Detroit Lions, and then Julian Edelman for the New England Patriots, probably the slowest receiver that makes catches and touchdowns and first downs, but he's sure-handed, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Galladay is one of those guys, Charlton, under the radar because he's in Detroit. He's playing with Matthew Stafford, but he's been a consistent 1,000-yard receiver in his tenure in the NFL. Julian Edelman is just reliable. You think about his performance last year in the Super Bowl being an MVP.
Yep.
You know, there's some talk eventually, Charlton, he should end up in the NFL Hall of Fame. But he's just a sure-handed, great team player in New England.
He got a great quarterback, Tom Brady. You don't have to worry about running 50, 60 yards route. Just give him 10, 15 yards, chuck and run, Big C. Tyler Boyd, Cincinnati, and then Amari Cooper for the Dallas Cowboys that used to catch passes for the Raiders, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you think about Tyler Boyd. He matured last year. He became Cincinnati's #1 receiver. He took a step above A.J. Green. A.J. was a little banged up, but Tyler Boyd delivered. He's that first-round draft pick that has shown that he deserved that right spot, Charlton. When you think about Amari Cooper, he has really helped Dak Prescott in his third year, Charlton, and they're hoping big things from him in the Dallas Cowboys offense this year to hopefully become another 1,000-yard receiver in that niche.
Let me give you a thought. Jarvis Landry, the man is talented, and now he has a teammate that I'll talk about next, but I think he's one of the most overlooked superstars on the team, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at what he has done since entering the NFL with the Miami Dolphins and then moving on to the Cleveland Browns, he's been a perennial all-star. He's averaging 100 receptions a year in his NFL career.
Yep.
He's that guy that goes under the radar because he's a quiet assassin.
Yeah, he's amazing. And now, I'm going to bring the last two because they're dominant athletes, and they have that, what they call that, there's a macho mentality and an alpha male, and they definitely have the swag. You look at Antonio Brown, formerly of the Pittsburgh Steelers, now with the Oakland Raiders, and the Odell Beckham Jr., formerly of the New York Giants, and now with Cleveland. Give me your thoughts on which one of those guys would you call a pass play for if you're down by 4 on the 20-yard line or say in the red zone and you need one player to make a catch. Do you trust Beckham or do you trust Brown, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you know, it depends, Charlton. You know, they're not with their former team, so we don't know how they're going to mesh in the new offensive schemes that they have in Oakland and Cleveland. You know, when you talk about top-flight receivers, you talk about a receiver that's been with a quarterback. They're trying to learn a new system. They're both trying to learn new quarterbacks. They both come with a lot of hype. They both come with a lot of baggage.
Yeah.
And will that baggage be more than what the hype is worth, Charlton? How will they mesh with those new quarterbacks, Mayfield in Cleveland, Carr in Oakland?
Yeah.
Will they become a demoralizing factor in those teams' offenses? That's what I'm concerned with those two receivers.
You know, it's interesting when we're bringing it up because oftentimes what they've done is when you look at Odell Beckham Jr. in New York, it wasn't the fact that he was, I guess, a troublemaker, but they're always focused on him. Now, I think there was a kicker by the name of Brown, if I have his name right, who had assaulted his wife 20 times. But Odell Beckham would kick the netting on the sideline for the kickers to kick through. And the cameras always focused on the guy that was abusing the net as opposed to the man that was abusing his spouse, Big C. And I just always thought that was about color and nothing more than that, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, one of the things I look at, Charlton, yes, it's wrong to abuse a woman. It's wrong to abuse anybody. But when you try to constantly draw the spotlight to yourself, then they're going to pick up on every little antic that you have.
Yeah.
Think about some of the great receivers that you talked about that they never talk about. They never talk about DeAndre Hopkins. They never talk about Julio Jones. They never talk about Mike Evans. You're never talking about Michael Thomas. You don't see any of those great receivers displaying antics on the sideline, going into temper tantrums in front of the media.
Yeah.
They go out and they're being productive. They get paid to play the game. They don't get paid to be some actor on the sideline. So when you act up, you're going to get the media's attention.
Yeah.
And so you create those problems for yourself.
Let's take a look at some of the greatest NFL draft steals of all time, because I know we talked about that segment yesterday with the historical black colleges in the South, and you look at Eddie Robinson. He's tutelaged and coached more college players to go on and play professional sports than any coach, any white coach in the history of college football. But you have a hard time finding that conference on TV. We talked about guys like Mel Blount from the HBC, Jerry Rice. There's guys like the great Walter Payton. Michael Strahan. There's so many great players that came out of the HBCs, but you don't see them on TV. So they would say this guy's a steal, when really he was one of the best receivers in the universe. But they never got the attention. So let's take a look at the greatest, I would say Big C's greatest NFL draft steals of all time. And I'm going to just throw out some names. You can give me your opinion about it. What about safety Ken Houston, the 9th round in 1967, taken by the Houston Oilers? Big C, he had 12 Pro Bowl appearances. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, in the OAFL, Charlton, Kenny Houston was just a dominant defensive back. And you think about that late round draft pick that he had, the 12 Pro Bowl appearances, Charlton, 47 interceptions in his career. And this is what I talked about, players from the HBCs not being seen on television, being late round draft picks, being paid very little money early in their career, but going on to be great Hall of Fame style players, Charlton.
Yeah, it's not what school you go to, it's what opportunity you get. I'm also going to bring up a guy that's very present, and a lot of the favorite prop bet friends of mine, they like him too. Tony Romo, Jerry Jones' prodigal son, undrafted in 2003. His record as a starter, 78-49. Didn't get the Cowboys to the Super Bowl. How about them Cowboys? How about Tony Romo, Big C? Your thoughts?
Tony Romo had a very dynamic career, Charlton. When you think about some quarterbacks that were drafted in that same draft that Tony Romo was in and never had the success that he had, injuries derailed his career, Charlton, but when you looked at him as a player, he was an all-star caliber quarterback.
Think about a guy that likes to eat quarterbacks the same way you like to eat those ribs, especially when you say you marinate them for... How do you marinate a rib for 72 hours? Does the rib just fall off the bone, Big C? Your thoughts?
Oh, yes. It's very tender, Charlton. By the time it comes out of that smoker, it is dying to get in your belly.
Well, James Harrison, linebacker, undrafted 2002. He looked at quarterbacks and wanted them to fall off the bone also. He won Defensive Player of the Year in 2008. Good old boy had 16 sacks in the season. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, James Harrison became a dominant player in the NFL. He built his body and he built his mind because of what he had to go through, Charlton. The teams overlooked him. Everybody remembers him for that 100-yard interception return in the Super Bowl versus the Cardinals to help the Steelers get that Super Bowl ring, Charlton.
And I remember that might have been the longest 99 yards he ran, Big Z, but that good old boy had the stamina to do it. And as far as just building his body, he did it, and a lot of people still appreciate the effort he put into it. Wide receiver Marcus Colston, 7th round in 2006, 9,759 career receiving yards. And he also has a Super Bowl ring. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, the Saints have always been known for finding diamonds in the rough. Drew Brees has made great receivers out of some of the gems that they've gone out and found. Marcus Colston, just under 10,000 yards in his career receiving, Charlton, and as you mentioned, a Super Bowl champion.
Another great tight end that, just like Gronkowski, or just like Andrew Luck, he's been banged up. But that good boy was a steal as a draft, Big C. Antonio Gates, undrafted in 2003, 116 career touchdowns, and that's most ever by a tight end. He was undrafted, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you look at Antonio Gates. He was a basketball player in college at Kent State. Got an opportunity to be invited to the Combine, got a free agent tryout with the San Diego Chargers, Charlton, and the rest is history. 116 touchdown receptions, more than any tight end in NFL history, and he's still chugging along.
Yeah, still chugging along. Wide receiver, this will take you back in the day. Harold Carmichael, 7th round pick in 1971. He's 6'8". Carmichael made the 70s all-decade team. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was one of those uncoverable receivers, Charlton, before we got all these highlight receivers of today. Think about it. You make the all-decade team in the 1970s as one of the greatest receivers in the NFL. Someday Canton will give a call to Harold Carmichael, and we'll see that big 6'8" frame show up there. Speaking
of another guy that if anyone could guard Carmichael, it was cornerback Lester Hayes, 5th round draft pick, 1977, 5 Pro Bowls, NFL Defensive Player of the Year, and 2 Super Bowl rings for the Raiders. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think half those Pro Bowls had Stickum all over them. I mean, he can't put a ring on his finger and never get it off with the Stickum. But Lester Hayes was a monster playing quarterback for the Oakland Raiders out of Texas A&M.
Yeah.
He was teamed up with Mike Hayes, which was one of the more formidable defensive back tandems in the NFL.
If anything, you know how the Major League Baseball, they did the players-only uniforms. I wonder if the players of today would appreciate, and the NFL might do this, Roger Goodell, give 1 week, maybe coming off the bye week, or maybe on Thursday Night Football, where the players could use Stickum again. Because that would let a lot of good old boys from back in the day appreciate how good Stickum was. Big C, would you think the NFL would go for that just as a marketing plea? They could even still Stickum to all the fans coming into a game. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that was some nasty stuff. I mean, to ever have that Stickum get on you, it was atrocious. Lester Hayes was one of the reasons why Stickum was banned from the NFL. But the gloves that they have now are so tacky that they mimic what Stickum brought to you as a player. But it keeps you clean, though.
It keeps you clean. Well, I'm sure a lot of them good boys, they have to throw away suits all the time. And I love what we do with Big C Sports. We're going to come up on the Big C timeout, and I really appreciate being able to go to the state capital of California, the 5th largest economy in the world, and I really appreciate Michael Harris for the invite, part of the California Black Agricultural Working Group. And, you know, we're in the Farm to Fork community in Northern California, so I really appreciate that and the support of Gavin Newsom and so many great people in the United States, from the U.S. Department of Commerce, California Chamber of Commerce, and global economies are merging together. And they're asking African Americans to be more of a part of that and not step to the side. We're going to take what's called the Big C pause, and we'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. And I really want to thank our sponsors for all the support. You can follow Big C Sports, brought to you by Google and Alexa. The next time you Google, think Big C Sports. The next time you Alexa, think Big C Sports. Just say Google, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll see our page pop up on the iHeartRadio platform. Also, you can say Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show, and Big C will do his thing, and I really appreciate our sponsors for all the support. I want to just get your thoughts on something, because we talked about commerce, and Big C, you've been a big proponent of saying read. Make sure you read. If you can't read, Google. When you think about governors and also the Department of Commerce, the U.S. Department of Commerce, the California Chamber of Commerce, when they have African Americans, we just been talking about this. It's amazing how the universe will bring things together. We've been talking about not just being a dumb athlete. So now Big C Sports shows up at the state capitol and talking to the same people that rub shoulders with the governor of California. And they're talking about commerce. No one asked me how much I bench press. No one asked how fast I ran the 40. No one asked what was my vertical leap. It was all about business. What can we do to create global commerce and get more people of color involved? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we talked about it a couple of days ago. There's plenty of billionaires and there's plenty of millionaires that are African American in this country. They need to go back and they need to help fund some of the HBCs and help those students get an early start, Charlton. It's there. But if we keep all the wealth in our pockets and not share it, then that's where it's going to be. You have to show people an opportunity. That's what you have to present for people. So as long as you close mouths stay out there, Charlton, people don't know where the next opportunity will exist.
That's very true. Closed mouths do not get fed. I think I've heard that so many times growing up. And I go back, I'm going to pay homage to my late grandmother. And her name was Alberta. And we were in her house. I remember I was 8 years old. I'm going to tie this into the day. It's about opportunity. I was 8 years old. She touched me on my forehead, and she called me by my nickname. And she said, I love hearing you speak. I love hearing your voice. And now to be doing it to the universe, to me, I don't take that for granted. I think she prophesized over it. And I want to ask everybody, take the time to tell young kids that they can be something. They don't have to be it now when you tell them, but just sow into their spirit. If you sow into their spirit, they can make it happen. Don't worry about people who are against you. I also want to say, there's 3 things that everybody in the world has to do on a daily basis. There's 3. You have to breathe, you have to eat, and you have to drink. And the 4th one is follow Big C Sports. Big C, wide receiver, Raymond Berry, 20th round, 1954. Think about this guy. 6 Pro Bowl teams, led the league in receptions 3 times, and 2 NFL championships. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Raymond Berry, Charlton, he was one of those receivers that just lit up the NFL. He played in Baltimore with the great Johnny Unitas, so he had a capable quarterback to help him out, Charlton. But Raymond Berry, when you think about it, the 20th round, he had been overlooked by 19 rounds and all the teams in the league at that time, Charlton.
Yeah.
But he didn't let that adversity stop him. He came up and became one of the greatest receivers the game has ever seen.
And speaking of another one that was the best the game has ever seen, defense L.C. Greenwood, 10th round, 1969. As a member of the Steel Curtain defense, would you believe he holds 4 Super Bowl rings and he's part of the glue that held that team together? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, part of that formidable Steel Curtain defense, Charlton, and you think about L.C. Greenwood, he always saved his big games for the playoffs and the Super Bowls. When you look at some of those Steelers Super Bowl victories, he was one of the most dominant defensive players on the team and on the field at that time, Charlton. It helped propel them to 4 unbeaten Super Bowls.
And I really love that his middle name started with a C, just like Big C Sports. Defensive end Richard Dent, 8th round, 1983. Would you believe Richard Dent, part of the Super Bowl MVP in 1985, and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2011? Big C, he was an 8th round pick. Big C, your thoughts?
An 8th round pick, Charlton, that was part of one of the greatest defenses to ever step on the field in the NFL, that 85 Bears defense, Charlton, that was just put mayhem on the rest of the league.
Yeah.
But Richard Dent, it shows what HBC players can do. He's out of Tennessee State, Charlton, went on to become one of the greatest defensive ends in the NFL, won a Super Bowl ring with the Bears as well as with the 49ers, Charlton, before ending his career in Canton.
Another dominant player. People won't know about this unless they really Google. Running back, Leroy Kelly, 8th round, 1964. Kelly gained 4,530 yards and scored 42 times in 42 games. Talk about a sure-handed guy, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Leroy Kelly, Charlton, when he came into the league, he paired with the great Jim Brown. And he came from the same college, Syracuse.
Yeah.
So he had a great lineage when he got there. But you think about that. You scored 42 times in 42 games, Charlton. Every game was a touchdown for Leroy Kelly.
Every game. I'm sure if prop betting existed back in the day, he was on a lot of prop bets. Will he score today? Yeah, if you bet 42 times in 42 games, amazing. Defensive end, John Randall. Undrafted, Big C, 1990. Randall had 7 Pro Bowls and 6 All-Pro nods in his Pro Football Hall of Fame. Big C, he was undrafted. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, he was undrafted, but his mouth never stopped just like his motor did in the NFL. He was one of the most talkative defensive players during his time in the league, Charlton, but he became an all-pro, a very dominant defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
His career ended in Seattle, but his stop ended up in the Hall of Fame.
I wonder what he would have done with Stickum and trying to eat Big C's ribs. How would that have looked? Could you imagine Randall, the Stickum on his hand, he had that dark paint under his eyes. How would he have been able to eat some of your ribs, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if he'd have been able to eat them, Charlton, because John never stopped talking. His entire time, he was his entire career in the NFL.
He'd be talking at the dinner table so much. Quarterback, you think about this. Warren Moon, undrafted. There were some knucklehead owners. If Warren Moon's undrafted, it's crazy. 1978, he was spurned by the NFL. He went to Canada, won 5 Grey Cups, and returned to the NFL and helped Houston get to the AFC Championship game. Also helped Minnesota get to that same playoff run, and he's now an NFL Hall of Famer. Undrafted, Big C, your thoughts?
He was undrafted as a player, Charlton. He played well into his 40s, as people are talking about Drew Brees and Tom Brady. Warren Moon, when he left pro football, had amassed over 70,000 yards passing between the 2 leagues, Charlton.
Wow.
He ended up in 10. Great player that was overlooked by all the franchises in the league at that time.
Yeah, and now he's doing broadcast work, and he's also pretty good with the cookies. I really appreciate out of the University of Washington. Wide receiver Andre Reed, 4th round, 1985. Reed collected 941 receptions, 13,000 yards, and a trip to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, he was part of that same Buffalo Bills that went to all of those consecutive Super Bowls. An outstanding target for Jim Kelly, Charlton. But, being a late-round draft pick, being overlooked, once he got onto the field, Charlton, everybody realized that they had made a mistake overlooking Andre Reed, and he ended up in Canton.
If a player could ever run with half of his head, that would be Terrell Davis. 6th round, 1985. He notched 4 straight 1,000-yard-plus seasons, including one where he ran over 2,000 yards and won the MVP and 2 Super Bowl rings and a trip to Canton. I remember Super Bowl 33, the Denver Broncos and the Green Bay Packers. He had over 200 yards rushing in 3 quarters, and they gave Elway the MVP. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, just a tremendous back. Unfortunately, his career was cut short by a leg injury, Charlton, but Terrell Davis proved what running backs are, having heart. Coming in, Charlton, not even being on the depth chart, being a late-round draft pick, but overtaking that starting role, leading the Denver Broncos to 2 consecutive Super Bowl victories, Charlton. Yep. Just an outstanding player, and he deservedly went to Canton, Ohio.
Yeah, just an amazing player, Big C. None of those good old boys out of Georgia. Wide receiver Chris Carter, 4th round, 1987. I remember seeing him in the Sugar Bowl against Texas A&M, and he could catch everything. I think he was coach at Ohio State was Earl Bruce. After being released by the Eagles and picked up by the Vikings, he was one of the greatest receivers in the NFL during the 1990s, and he won a trip to Canton, Ohio. Big C, your thoughts?
When you think about the quarterbacks that Chris Carter played for with the Minnesota Vikings, Charlton, Warren Moon, Randall Cunningham, young man out of Central Florida.
Culpepper, Dante Culpepper.
I can't think of his name at the moment.
Dante Culpepper.
But he and Randy Moss, Charlton, scared every defensive back in the NFL.
Yeah.
But Chris Carter could catch everything, even a cold, when he threw it to him.
Yeah, that was
just an outstanding player, Charlton. Ended up in the Hall of Fame, never got to the Super Bowl, but nevertheless, one of the top 10 receivers to ever play in this league.
Yeah, and he also caught for the great Dante Culpepper. I'm not gonna big up the name, but this guy, Dick Night Train Lane, undrafted in 1952. Would you believe he undrafted, Big C? He led the league in interceptions twice and considered one of the best defensive backs to ever play in the game. Undrafted, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Dick Night Train Lane, Charlton, played at one of those California universities, no longer play football, University Pacific.
Yep,
played with the Los Angeles Rams, Charlton. He was a terror in the defensive back end in the NFL. Led the league in interceptions twice. One of the more unheralded great players, African-American players, the league has ever seen.
Yeah, that's ever seen. And now I'm going to bring up an iconic guy, and I don't think anybody would doubt that he should be on anybody's list. Quarterback, the great Johnny Unitas, 9th round, 1955. Johnny Unitas was the most prolific quarterback in the league at that time. He held the record for the most consecutive games with the 47 touchdowns. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Johnny U. I mean, Johnny was personified with those black high-top shoes in his leadership in the NFL. He played in the NFC Championship game, Charlton. He played in 2 Super Bowls with the Colts. This guy held all the records basically when he retired from the NFL. The 47 consecutive games with a touchdown.
Yep.
That was just broken recently by Drew Brees, but he still holds a host of other NFL records, Charlton.
Think of another guy that was bagging groceries, the great Kurt Warner, undrafted, 1994, quarterback, the greatest show on turf. It's amazing St. Louis doesn't have football. He led the Rams to back-to-back Super Bowls and went from bagging groceries to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Now he's doing work in TV. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about Kurt Warner and what he did with that miraculous Rams offense under Dick LeMille, Charlton, the weapons that he had, Isaac Bruce, Terry Holt, Marshall Faulk, just an outstanding team, Charlton. They set an NFL scoring record going to back-to-back Super Bowls. And even after he left the Rams, Charlton, he were able to get the dismal Arizona Cardinals to a Super Bowl before going to the NFL Hall of Fame.
That's right. So if you're bagging groceries, just try out for the team. You never know what fate has in hand. Shannon Sharpe, tight end, 7th round, 1990. Sharpe managed to grab 10,000-plus receiving yards and 3 Super Bowl championships and a trip to Canton, Ohio. Sometimes, what do the Sharpe brothers eat? They look like they're still working out to play the game next week. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about Shannon Sharpe, Charlton, came from little Valdosta State down in Georgia, to become one of the greatest tight ends that the NFL has ever seen. Started his career, with the Denver Broncos, moving on to the Baltimore Ravens, Charlton, getting in the Canton Hall of Fame, and as you mentioned, those 3 Super Bowl rings to carry along with him.
Yeah, amazing family. Big C. Wide receiver Antonio Brown, 5th round, 2010. Browns gained no less than 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns for 6 straight years, Big C. Give that man a helmet, your thoughts?
Well, what he did with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Charlton, coming out of Little Kent State, is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
He teamed up with Ben Roethlisberger, becoming one of the greatest, quarterback receiver tandems in the NFL during that time.
Yeah.
Antonio Brown was basically uncoverable, averaging basically 100 receptions a year with the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's moved on to Oakland now, Charlton,
Yeah.
and we'll see what's left of his career.
Yeah, and the man, I think, helmets aside and burned feet aside, whatever it is, when you look at what he's done as a receiver, Big C, if you can get 1,200 yards, I don't care what team you're on, then that guy can play. Defensive end, Deacon Jones, 14th round, Big C, 14th, 1961, known as the Minister of Defense and Defensive Player of the Year twice, 8 Pro Bowls, and a trip to Canton, Big C. Your thoughts on the great Deacon Jones?
The late David Deacon Jones, Charlton, was just a terror. I mean, he personified what defensive end is today in the NFL. He set the standard. He played in an era when they didn't keep statistics on sacks, because if they did, Charlton, who knows, he may have had 200 in his career. But he created the head slap. He terrorized offensive linemen in the NFL, and just a great individual.
Yeah, thinking of another great player, a guy that's going on to help a lot of people do well in business, talking about Governor Gavin Newsom and also this Pan-African trade that's happening between the United States, the southern part, the South America, and also the Caribbean. And they're trying to get more people of color involved, more businesses in trade. Not lifting football, not lifting weights or shooting 1,000 jump shots a day, but getting involved in trade. That's how money moves all over the world. Well, here's another man that helps other people start business, the great Roger Staubach, quarterback. 10th round draft pick, 1964, known as Captain America. The great Roger Staubach led the Cowboys to 2 Super Bowls. And you think about it, the league passing rating 4 times. He was a guy at the top of the charts, and he made 6 Pro Bowls. Big C, 10th round, your thoughts?
Well, 10th round, because he was a midshipman in Navy, he had a commitment to the Naval Service, Charlton.
Yep.
He was a Heisman Trophy winner when he was in college, but when he came to the Dallas Cowboys, he was in a battle with Craig Morton for quarterback supremacy. He ended up winning that battle. Craig Morton was shipped on to the Denver Broncos. Captain America took the Dallas Cowboys, Charlton, to 4 Super Bowl appearances, winning 2 of those. Just an outstanding leader on and off the field in Dallas, and Roger Staubach is very memorable in everybody's mind on a collegiate and professional level, and he's in both of those Hall of Fames.
Yeah, the stars at night shine deep and bright in the heart of Texas. Somebody was singing that song to me, Big C. It's a crazy song, but Roger Staubach definitely earned the star on his helmet. Quarterback, Bart Starr, 17th round, 1956. Bart Starr led Green Bay to 5 NFL championship victories in the first 2 Super Bowls, league MVP in 1966, and NFL Hall of Fame, the great Bart Starr. Big C, your thoughts?
The late Bart Starr, Charlton, did it all. Coming out of the University of Alabama as a 17th round draft pick, never spent a day on the bench during his career as a Green Bay Packer. He was a starter from a rookie, Charlton, and the rest was history. You talked about those NFC championships prior to winning the first 2 Super Bowls.
Yep.
He was a consummate winner in professional football. They talk about Brady's championship. Bart Starr has 7. Tom Brady has 6. Yep. He's always going to be remembered for that quarterback sneak on 4 Charlton when they beat the Dallas Cowboys 66 NFC Championship game.
Yeah, amazing career, Big C. Tom Brady, quarterback, 6th round in 2000. At 42 years of age, his record speaks for itself. 6 Super Bowl victories, but 9 Super Bowl appearances. He's been in the Super Bowl half his career in the league, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, it's almost a given that the New England Patriots are going to end up in the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady is going to be a part of that. Right now, they're odds-on favor of getting back.
Yeah.
But when you think about just having 6 Super Bowl rings hanging on your fingers, Charlton, or hanging around your neck, on the necklace,
on his neck.
Tom Brady has done it all. He silenced all the critics and all of those quarterbacks that were drafted in front of him to become the GOAT.
Yeah, and Tom Brady out of Sarah High School in San Mateo. Same with Barry Bonds and Lynn Swann. Just went on to greatness, was going to go to Cal, decided he would go to Michigan, and then when he got a chance to get drafted, just like with Andrew Luck, Tom Brady got his chance because I think the guy that started before him got injured, Big C. That's what gave Tom Brady the chance. You look at the same opportunity in Indianapolis. When nature calls, you got to answer the bell. On this date, August 27th, in 1982, the great Ricky Henderson stole his 119th base to break Lou Brock's single-season Major League Baseball record for stolen bases, and now they call the home of the A's Ricky Henderson Field. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about that day, Charlton, when Ricky broke that record, Lou Brock held the record at 118 stolen bases.
Yeah.
Something he had done in the 60s. No one ever thought that record would be broken.
No.
Ricky Henderson stole his 119th base, Charlton, to break that record. At the end of the season, he ended up with 136 stolen bases on that year, Charlton. And he's still Major League Baseball's all-time stolen base king. You think about how that great art has fallen by the wayside in Major League Baseball today, Charlton.
Yeah.
The leader in Major League Baseball right now with stolen bases only has 36 stolen bases on the season.
Wow.
Number 2 on the list right now has 30. So you think about how much Ricky Henderson meant to the offense of the Oakland A's as well as the New York Yankees during his playing day, Charlton.
Yeah.
His singles would automatically turn into a double.
Yeah, and another kid from Northern California, Oakland. I just appreciate how he's just taken over and showing people what base stealing is like. I want to run through tonight's schedule, and then I want to cover where teams stand, and then I want to get into some college football on Big C Sports. Tonight's schedule for August 27th, Baltimore at Washington. These games are already underway. Pittsburgh at Philadelphia. Atlanta is at Toronto. Chicago is at New York Mets. Cleveland is at Detroit. Cincinnati is at Miami. St. Louis is at Milwaukee. You have Minnesota at the Chicago White Sox. Tampa Bay is at Houston. And then Oakland might be the hottest team in baseball. They're at Kansas City. Boston at Colorado. Arizona is at San Francisco. The great Bruce Bochy, over 4,000 wins at the Manor. Just amazing. And then the Texans at the LA Angels, Los Angeles Angels. You have Los Angeles Dodgers. Man, the Dodgers have dropped 3 of the last 4. 2 to the Yankees, and they lost to San Diego. They got to get back on the slide, Big C. And then you have the New York Yankees at Seattle. I know you love Major League Baseball, and I know I love it as well. I'll be honest, football is more of my love, but baseball is also a great game. And when we look at some of the games right now, and the teams and how they're positioned, if you look at the American League, in the East you have the New York Yankees. They're 86-47. They're 9.5 game lead, Big C. Give me your thoughts on how the Yankees are playing. They got swept by Oakland, but now they're back on top again.
Well, they're back on top, and they've been on top all year long. That 9.5 game lead over the Tampa Rays, Charlton, they seem to have the American League East locked up.
Give me your thoughts on the Central. Minnesota Twins, which is not the sexy name for baseball, but they're 79-51. They have a 3.5 game lead. How do you feel about Minnesota, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Minnesota can be in any contest, Charlton. They've led the division all year long. They've led Major League Baseball in home runs this season, and that's what's kept them on top of the Central Division.
Let's come out west. Houston Astros, 85-47, a 9-game lead. It looks like the A's might be playing as good, but not going to overtake them, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, I guess one of the things you can say about Houston, they do not have a problem when it comes to baseball, Charlton. They've dominated the Western Division all year long. They've gotten solid pitching with that 9-game lead, Charlton, in this juncture of the season. They seem to have the West locked up.
Yeah, and also other pennant races, Major League Baseball, are already over. But let's look at the National League. In the East, the Atlanta Braves, they're 80 wins, 53 losses. They're 5.5 game lead, and they're a young team, Big C. Your thoughts on the Braves?
Well, Charlton, they're trying to stay on top of the Washington Nationals. That's their closest competitor in the National League East. The Braves have won the East last year. They haven't took a step back, Charlton. They got a lot of young, great players in that lineup that have been able to hold the fast.
Let's take you out to the Central. St. Louis Cardinals, 71-58. Love. Baseball is great when St. Louis is in the playoffs. They have a 2.5 game lead. They got to be a little bit nervous playing under the Arch, Big C. Just a 2.5 game lead. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's the tightest division in all of baseball. That 2.5 game lead is over the Chicago Cubs. They've been in a little slump as of late. St. Louis is trying to hold fast and hold off the Cubs to dominate the Central.
Yeah. Now, out west, National League, LA Dodgers, Chavez were being 86-46. They have a 20-game lead, but they've hit a little bit of a hiccup, and they got to get it right in San Diego. Are you still high on the Dodgers when the Yankees, they only scored 4 runs against the Yankees in their home stadium? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, they have the best home record in all of Major League Baseball, Charlton. They've only lost 21 games this season at home. But you think about having a 20-game lead in your division.
Yeah.
That division race is all but over. The Dodgers would have to have a complete collapse not to make the playoffs.
Well, they're definitely in, but do they go in with a good attitude, or are they kind of weird? You know, we just got knocked out by the Yankees in our home stadium. They know what happened against Houston a couple of years ago in the World Series, and then Boston came in and did it to them also. So when they played some of the top teams from the American League, they haven't fared that well. I don't know what that's all about, but I want to take in the last half of Big C Sports, I want to go down to college football, and we'll talk about that. But I really want to say I'm so grateful for being invited to the state capitol, the fifth largest economy in California, to help just give a speech about what we're doing with Big C Sports and also insurance. Want to be a part of this global commerce, not just to talk about it, but to be about it. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Speaker. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast Television. If you have the app called Alexa, just say Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. And I really appreciate our sponsors for their support. College football Thursday night, Big C. It has 3 ranked teams. Think about this. Florida A&M at number 17, University of Central Florida, the new kid on the block. Texas State at number 12, Texas A&M. And then number 14, Utah at BYU. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we're looking at Florida A&M going down to UCF. UCF is going to have a new starting quarterback this year. Notre Dame transfer Brandon Wimbush.
Yep.
He's going to get the nod at the start of the season. UCF has been one of those programs on the rise the past couple of years. And Charlton, if they can win this game and run the table, will they challenge for a playoff berth at the big table this year?
Well, you know, probably not, because they're still not the sexy matchup. And I know everybody has their own opinion about who's going to get in and where, but sometimes those blue bloods, they don't let you in, Big C. You got to be invited in. I also know I'm excited about college football as I am about baseball, basketball, hockey, MMA. There's so many, boxing. We do tennis, track and field. Everything is great in Love and War. Also pay attention to the Global Summit and this new thing that's backed by the California Chamber of Commerce, the U.S. Department of Agriculture and Commerce. Is a lot going on in California, supported by Governor Gavin Newsom. I want to finish up with some thoughts on college football, because Alabama is favored by 35 points. Clemson is favored over Georgia Tech by 36 points. Do these teams cover the spread? And the big game is Auburn. I don't know if it's inexplicably, you got to give it to them until the Pac-12 takes it away, but they're favored over a higher-ranked Oregon team. Big C, which one of those games will make you sit down with some ribs? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about Alabama, you think about Clemson. These are the teams that you want to see play. These are the teams that competed for the national title last year. You think about Alabama, they're going to come out with 2 chips on their shoulders.
Yeah.
They were embarrassed and demolished by Clemson last year, so I don't feel any empathy for their opponents for taking those games, because I see Alabama scoring over 50 points in a hurry, if not before the third quarter is over.
Wow.
Clemson is a team that has to come out and prove itself that it was worthy of winning that national title. That what we saw with Trevor Lawrence last year was not a fluke.
Yeah.
That he's not going to have a sophomore slump. They like to pass the ball. They have a couple outstanding receivers. They have an All-American running back, Charlton. I see both of those teams running up the score. And Clemson is playing a conference game to start the season.
Wow.
When you think about Auburn and Oregon, Charlton,
yeah,
Oregon is the only hope for the Pac-12 to even make it to the playoffs. If they stumble at all against Auburn, the Pac-12 is automatically eliminated from the playoff series, Charlton.
Well, there's something about 400 years, and we talked about that today at the state capitol. But the University of Southern California, they have the biggest game that no one's talking about. The men of Troy. This is USC football. They're the Pac-12 champion that people think about. Okay, now the conference is relevant. If the Pac-12 champion is USC, people say, well, the Pac-12 is relevant. If they're not the Pac-12 champion, then no matter who wins, people say, well, the conference is down. The biggest game of the Pac-12 for this week, people say is Oregon versus Auburn, and it might be. But the second biggest game in the Pac-12 is Fresno State at USC. The Bulldogs have knocked off UCLA and Arizona State back-to-back. Arizona State in the bowl game, and they went to the Rose Bowl and beat UCLA by a couple touchdowns last year. They play up for these games against Southern California. A lot of the kids at Fresno State are from LA. This game is at the Coliseum. Is this the beginning or the end for Clay Helton? Jeff Tedford coaches Fresno State, also played for the Bulldogs under the late Jim Sweeney. Jeff Tedford took the University of California, Berkeley to #1 in the country just for a quarter, and they were upset at home by Oregon State. If Fresno State knocks off USC, I believe that Lynn Swann should give a call to this man and say, you've beaten the Pac-12 teams. We want you to take a look at coaching the Trojans. If that happens, Clay Helton would be out. Would you mean losing your job on the first week or even winning your job? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, if he loses this game, Charlton, Clay Helton at USC, it'll be the second Pac-12 coach that has lost a game against that same conference.
Yep.
Charlton, Hawaii beat Arizona.
Yep.
When you think about that game and now you're looking at Fresno State, this reminds me of a bowl game that Fresno State and USC played back years ago, Charlton, when Larry Smith was coaching USC.
24/7.
And Fresno State went down and beat them in the Anaheim Bowl. Jim Sweeney was the coach down there. It cost Larry Smith his job. And I see this as being one of those type of, catch games for USC. They can't go in and take Fresno State lightly. USC's program has been down the past couple of years. Fresno State has been on the rise. They have a very high-powered offense. And USC is going to have to hope to have some defensive players because I give Fresno State the advantage in this game.
Well, USC's favored by 13, so we'll see what happens. It's all fair and love and war. I love bringing Big C Sports. I love talking about Big C's choices as some of the top steals in the NFL draft. Some guys that were not even drafted became Pro Bowl players. We love talking college football. I love talking about baseball and who's really swinging the bat, who will really run down the hunt for October, Big C. And I love talking about commerce. Big C, back in the day, there was a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always say to Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young men rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, when we're looking at college football coming up on Thursday, we got Texas State at Texas A&M at the Kyle Field. Texas A&M needs to be on upset alert. Texas State has one of the finest quarterbacks in Mason Fine in the country. This young man throws for about 360 yards a game last season.
Wow.
He's underrated, Charlton, and Texas A&M can't take him lightly.
Well, you can't take anyone lightly. A hungry dog is ready to eat, and there'll be a lot of dogs looking to eat this weekend. And remember, when you think about eating, when you think about breathing, when you think about drinking, think about Big C Sports. You can find us every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and call 911 because no man or woman should ever have to deal with that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.